Hi, this is Elliot Eisenberg of Graphs and Laughs here to get you up to date on the latest in residential sales data for the month of October. In October, in Hillsborough County, single-fam home prices rose. They rose 0.2%. On the multifam side, they slid 6.6%. But the 0.2% rise was the only county and the only type of property, single family, that rose across all three counties. Sales activity, however, picked up for both single and multi. On the single fam side, sales activity rose 5.5%. On the multifamily side, 6.4%. So the flat to declining home prices are resulting in increased sales activity. Sales price as a percentage of list price declined for both single family and multifamily. It's down to 95.3% for single family and 94% for multifamily. Pending sales, however, like sales activity, is picking up a lot, 35.3% on the single family side and 25.1% for townhomes and condominiums. Lastly, inventory also is rising, and that's pushing home prices down, obviously, and they're up to 3.9 months on single family and 5.6 months for multifamily. In Pasco County, single fam home prices slid 4%, and on the townhome and condominium side, they slid a larger 9.7%. Sales activity was mixed, up 11.8% for single family houses, but down 19.8% for townhomes and condominiums. Sales price as a percentage of list price continued to decline here as well for both types of properties, but they were the best numbers for both types of properties. 95.6% for single family, that was the strongest across all three counties in both types of properties, and 94.1%, that was the strongest multifam performance for that sales metric. Pending sales, like sales, was also mixed. Up a strong 15.6% for single family, but down 9% for multifamily. Lastly, inventory here, like everywhere else, continues to rise, but not by all that much. It's now 3.7 months of inventory on the single fam side. That's the lowest inventory number across all three counties and both types of properties, and 4.7 months for multifamily. That's the lowest level for multifamily units across all three counties. In Pinellas County, single-family home prices slid 2.2%, and multifamily prices slid a larger 6.2%, but that was the best multifam performance across all three counties. Sales activity, however, picked up strongly, up a very strong 36.3% for single-family units. That was the best performance across all three counties and both types of properties, and up a still very, very strong 23.5% for multifamily units. That was the best multifam performance across all three counties. Sales price as a percentage of list price continued to decline. It's now just 93.3% on the single family side and 91.3% on the multifam side. However, pending sales activity is roaring also, up a very strong 33.6% for single family and up a pleasantly strong 14.6% for multifamily. And inventory is also rising. It's now up to 4.2 months for single family and 8 months for multifamily. And those rises in the inventory levels are clearly reducing the sales price to list price ratios, but they're also increasing sales activity. Turning our attention to the national economy, GDP in Q3 is likely to come in very strong, somewhere around 3.5% or maybe even 4%. However, I expect GDP in Q4, which we're in right now, to weaken meaningfully, and we may well also have weak GDP growth in Q1. Hopefully by then, lower interest rates, by the end of Q1, lower interest rates and one big beautiful bill, we begin to pick up the economy and growth picks up. The major problem that the economy faces right now is a simultaneous rise in both inflation and unemployment. And the problem is this is causing dissension in the Fed. Some people at the Fed want to lower rates to reduce the unemployment rate, but some other members in the Fed want to raise rates or keep them constant so that they get inflation down. The problem is solving one of these problems makes the other one worse, because a rise in interest rates will lower inflation, but will worsen unemployment, and vice versa if you lower rates. That said, I expect the Fed to cut rates at their next meeting in December by a quarter point. They cut in September by a quarter point. They cut in October by a quarter point. They meet every 6 weeks. They didn't meet in November, but they meet in middle of December, and they'll cut rates then. So because, again, unemployment is slowly getting worse, and that's more serious. The reason inflation is getting worse is because of tariffs, and that effect will weaken and go away by mid to late next year. It's a temporary problem. The unemployment rate is more serious. As for the mortgage rates, unfortunately, they've been very tightly range bound for years. They've been between 6 and 7% since September or so of 2022, and there's not much in the near future that I expect will change that. In terms of a recession likelihood, I peg it at about 30-35%. Certainly somewhat elevated, but artificial intelligence spending has been very strong, and that's been helping the economy immeasurably. Looking at the national housing market, sales activity remains quite weak, at barely above 4 million units, and we've been there also for about 3 years. What we really need is more new housing built. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get prices down with high interest rates. That's the problem that we face. And in many communities in the Northeast and Midwest, there simply aren't enough houses to go around, and home price appreciation is pretty strong. Turning our attention to the Florida economy, it continues to do well. Population growth and GDP growth are strong, and the unemployment rate continues to be lower than the national rate. And with the elections that we had in early November, the outcomes there are probably likely to induce increased immigration into Florida from other northeastern states, one state in particular. As far as the Florida housing market is concerned, specifically, it's not as strong as the Florida economy. There's no way it could possibly be. COVID was so good to the state of Florida economically and immigration and home price wise, it couldn't last. And we see this decline across the entire state of Florida. In many, many cities, home prices are down, not just Tampa, not just Miami, but also Orlando and Jacksonville, and there are many, many others that are experiencing this. But this decline in home prices is not something to be afraid of. It's something to be embraced. What it will do is increase affordability, and that is likely to increase sales activity, and that would be good for everybody.